Hello and welcome back to Fully Booked, the Hidden Gems author podcast, in which Craig Touch and myself, Roland Hume, get to chat to some of the bright figures and leading lights in this crazy industry we are in of writing and self-publishing and traditional publishing. Because the guest that we have today, we are both very, very excited to have. It is Kayla Perrin, who is a USA Today and Essence best-selling author. She's writing my zone, writing romantic suspense for Harlequin intrigue. We are delighted to have you here to talk about how you get to be such a prolific writer and how you write so fluently. So thank you so much, Kayla, for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you, and thank you for having me here to chat. It's always fun to talk and share about my writing process.
Oh, well, we are delighted to have you. And of course, we wouldn't be here without the man himself, Craig Touch, the owner and founder of Hidden Gems and an author himself. How are you doing today, Craig?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Roland. And thanks for coming, Kayla. We were talking about offline about how you use dictation software to write your books, which is, the topic we want to discuss today, because I know there's a lot of authors out there for a variety of reasons that use or want to use or want to hear more about how to use dictation software, more efficiently or at all, right? I know that when I was, first writing many years ago, it was, I believe there was two big names, but the big one that I remember was Dragon, Naturally Speaking. Yeah. I remember trying it back then, and it wasn't bad. It had some issues, but this was many years ago, so I'm sure that it's gotten way better. I mean, even our phones, into it, and they do it to speech. And somebody was telling me actually that the podcast, you can sometimes turn on subtitles, and I mean, like, we haven't set that up or anything, but they said, you can listen to the podcast with subtitles. So clearly it's generating text to speech sort of on the fly. It's amazing what they can do now. So yeah, tell us a little about like how you got started with your writing, how you started using dictation software, that sort of thing.
Now, I think I started wanting to use dictation software because, when you type so much, you start to get, carpal tunnel. I was starting to have that in my wrists, and it was aggravating. And I thought there must be something that I can do to help mitigate this. And I found out about Dragon, Naturally Speaking. I'm trying to remember what version I might have started at. I know there was, I think, a version 9. I heard someone say this, and this is funny, that if you took Dragon and all the mistakes they made and put it into some sort of comedy book, it would be hilarious. Like, what was Dragon saying here? The key is, and I haven't always mastered this, to go back to what you dictated pretty much shortly after you dictated it, so you remember, because there were times I'd go back and say, what yellow boat was she on in the river? I don't remember. I don't remember saying this. Like, it would pick up what it thought you said. So there were a lot more mistakes then, but it really did help in terms of being able to free up my wrists from all that excessive typing, because I was writing a lot. So that was really the first reason that I got into it. And I sort of quickly realized there were two different versions of Dragon. You could get the home version, which you could sit down at your computer and you would dictate. But then I thought, well, what if I want to be on the road and I dictate? There were recorders. I think I saw that they had some that you could use a digital recorder with, but you needed the more expensive version that would transcribe the recording. And that, for me, became more of a game changer, because nailing me down to my desk to write is a hard thing. I don't know if anyone relates. Like, I just want to be anywhere else. Like, bring me to the service station, the service, I'm getting my car worked on, and I have nothing to do, and I have my laptop. I'm very good at getting work done then. So when I'm at home, it's like, maybe I should be cleaning the toilets, like something that seems far more exciting at that moment than writing. So when I learned that you could get the recorder version, I upgraded, which was more expensive, but then I got, get the recorders, they say. I think I might have invested in a cheap one to start, and they're not as good. But again, this was years ago. Kind of, you sort of don't have to worry about that as much, because even your phone is a great recorder right now. But anyway, I got a recorder, and I might go somewhere else and sit and then write, or I might sit in my bed instead of getting up and going to the computer, and I would dictate into the recorder, and then it has the transcribe recording feature, which is fantastic. So it really allows you a lot of leeway. If you're somewhere, let's say you're waiting, I don't know, Black Friday, you're in your car waiting to go into the line at Best Buy, but you have some moments you can sit in your car, you could get some writing done because you could dictate whatever, you could put it in your recorder and then go home and find out that in that half an hour you wrote 3 pages. So that's how I have been able to, you can squeeze more writing time in when you have these other tools to make it happen. And I probably didn't answer a million questions, but that's why I'm here. So ask me what I've missed and we'll continue.
Well, I mean, the one point I wanted to clarify was, are you writing while you're cleaning toilets?
You know what? No.
So, no, but
I want to know the answer to that one. You should see
No,
the state of my toilet.
Because I think but I have been doing things like I'll be cooking and writing. So I'll be cutting potatoes, and now I've got my dictation headset on and I'm doing my whole thing. So it depends what you're doing. If I'm kind of doing, I don't want to say it's cutting potatoes is mindless, but cleaning toilets kind of takes you to not as nice of a place. You're not like,
not for romance, right?
No. But if I'm, even sometimes if I'm like, let's say if I'm sweeping the floor, I might do that. So,
well, okay. So what I think is the issue for me, and this is like from what I remember, and this was the non-recorder version. So I would sit in front of the, word processor and talk, and I would put the words down, and that's fine. I think that the issue I would have if doing it the way you're talking about is I kind of like, if all of a sudden I want to write, it's like I kind of sometimes need to see what I've been writing before. I've got to sort of look at where did I leave off? What did I sort of say last chapter? But if I'm just standing around in line somewhere or doing something and I pick up a recorder, now it's like, I mean, I guess I could, if you're writing out a sequence, that would be fine. Maybe, it would be hard to sort of like pick up where you left off, I would imagine, right?
Well, Craig, I'm going to give you a virtual slap on the wrist because, have you ever participated in NaNoWriMo, for example? Which I
not
just did.
Many years.
Yeah,
but
it's not your thing. I can tell, right? Like you want to do everything sequentially in this beautiful order, and sometimes that's just not when the best writing happens. At least not for me. I'll speak for myself. So that's the best thing for me about dictation. I am not tied down to what I just did. My internal editor gets to be out the door for that moment, and I just write. And I'm going to tell you, some of the numbers I've come up with are kind of insane. I've written 10,000 words a day dictating, but they're not all going to be great words because for me, and I don't know how you feel, Craig, for me, the magic comes when I'm editing. So I need to have that page that's got words on it in order to edit it. But it is easier if you can, if you can kind of have, I'm a pantser. Okay, I'm gonna throw that out there. I'm a pantser. So sometimes what I come up with dictating is something that I go, oh my God, I never thought of that. It just takes my story in another direction. Sometimes I think it's a great scene, but I can't use it. But you can still kind of plot within what your plan is. So if you know that chapter 1, I'm going to have, someone, I don't know, jumping over Niagara Falls to retrieve something, let's just say. And then chapter 2, it's going to be sequential to that. You can at least dictate what you know. And if you can't go farther than that, do what you can. But it really does allow you to, I think it takes away the internal editor and the characters kind of start to take over. And that's what I like, because I've really come up with stuff that sort of surprises me and I guess takes me in a different direction than I thought I might go. I love it.
I mean, the blank page is very intimidating.
Yes,
and
it is.
I think also one of the curses of writers is this desire to go back and edit what you've just written. So I've been stuck on the first 3 chapters of the book forever because I go back and edit it, and then I go back and edit it, and they go back, and it's like you just need to write.
And I think that's the thing. I what I think with dictation is it should allow you to get at least your first draft down, get it completed. I'm not saying it has to be your finished, polished book, because when I now come to editing, I'm really not using dictation quite so much. I might sit in front of the computer with the headset on, and then you can go to certain parts and insert, but there's a lot more jumping around. So it's not as easy to just sit, except if I'm adding passages and so forth. But dictating allows me to get the first draft down. So I no longer have the blank page, and now I can get to work.
So
who likes the editing process? I mean, does no one like
well,
it?
Okay, so you can't really use like this for editing then, I guess.
I'm not going to say no. I'm on a couple of groups on Facebook, and there are people who use it for everything, because some people who really just either they're having a lot of problems with their wrists, they use it for navigating the web, they use it for everything. So they're asking questions like, how do you get Dragon to open up this search bar? To me, that doesn't matter. I just hit my mouse, I go where I want, I type. But yes, I do. I use it to edit, but I'm also using my hands probably as much. I'm typing, and then maybe if I'm at a passage where I know I can dictate, I'll dictate. It becomes more of a combination of the two at that point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it does. Yeah, it's funny because it's true. I'm more of a plotter. I'm pretty anal about, like not rules, but like, there's a set order, I gotta do it and this and that, right? And that's something I struggle with. And, my writing can sometimes be super slow because I tend to edit as I go, which I know I shouldn't do, but because of my, OCD kind of tendencies, I'm just like, that's not perfect yet, and I'll just keep stopping. So, I mean, maybe that would be a way to sort of get through that, because I do agree that in those times where I have been able to just put out a quicker first draft, it's easier then to then go back and finish and polish that up than it is, and it's faster than it is to like just sit there trying to do it the whole way through, because you're not going to anyways. There's always going to be something that comes up later. You're gonna have to go back and change stuff again, but I can't make my brain believe that. So
do you find that dictating comes naturally as you try to say things, Craig? I'm addressing you.
I'm not dictating as I'm writing in my.
No, when you tried in the past, was it easy or no? Some people find it hard.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, it's certainly not something that would come naturally to me. Maybe it's something I could learn and learn to love. Right? I mean, I didn't drink coffee till I was in my 40s, and now I drink it all the time. Right? So you
didn't drink coffee until you were in your 40s.
I know, it's ridiculous, right?
I didn't start till I was like in my 20s. I hated it before as well. So now I can't. Like, it's been a 2-cup day so far.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I can't say that I won't. I would never be a convert if I tried. But I think in my mind, to sort of talk out a book, it would be harder than it is for me to type. Like, I can type pretty fast, and I'm a visual learner, right? So I kind of need to see those words on the page, and that helps my brain go, I think.
So you couldn't, okay, I recently just learned about this. You guys might know what this is. The free writer, that little.
Yeah, the free write. It used to be called the Hemming write or something, and then the estate of Ernest Hemingway got upset, but then it's now called the free
is that
write.
what happened?
Yeah, I was so excited because I was like, oh, it's got Hemingway's name on it. I'll buy anything with Hemingway's name on it. And then now it's the free write. But isn't that wonderful because it's distraction free?
Well, see, but that might not work for Craig, because Craig's got to see how much he wrote before, right?
What is that?
It's basically just a keyboard with a little Kindle style screen, and all you can do with it is write.
And
right.
Okay, so did you hear? There used to be something called, and I think it still exists. You can get one called the Alpha Smart. Do you remember that?
Yes,
I forgot all about that until I saw this free write, and I love, we love distractions, right? Procrastination. So like I said, oh, this free write. What is free write? Oh, look, you can only see like maybe 5-6 lines of your text, and then I remembered I had an Alpha Smart, and then they had upgraded that to the Neo. So it was kind of like this. The battery lasted forever, just like 3 AA or 2 AA batteries. And if you were on a bus, if you were on a train, if you were somewhere, you could just write, and it prevented you from having your internal critic, because you couldn't see too many lines. You could just sort of see the few lines that you had. So it kind of kept you going. So people, that's what they credit even like the free write with, that allows you sort of that free writing without being able to go back and edit, Craig. So it kind of has a similar feel to how you write with dictation for me without being distracted by the words you've just come up with. And quite frankly, when I would write on my Neo, I would sometimes be like, this sucks. I know that this sucks right now, what I'm writing, but I'm going to keep going and I'll fix it later. And even as I'm sometimes in my dictating, I'll be like, I'll say something, I'll be, yeah, I don't think I like that. Yeah, okay, keep going. Right? It's just like that. Just keep going, keep writing. I can always fix it with an edit. But that's where, I everyone's got to be editing. I mean, one woman said, because I did NaNoWriMo, and she said, oh, I always try to make sure my first draft is perfect. I wanted to do that, but I refrained on the call. I was like, I said, did I hear you correctly? Did you actually? I said, I didn't know there was such a like. Why would you put that level of pressure on yourself? It can't be done. It's never going to be perfect. And even to the point where when you see your books that are published and you open, you go, oh, hell, I would have changed that if I could have, right? Like, that never ends. So it has to be, your first draft not, going to be perfect. But I suppose if your way could be like, Craig, you need to work on part of it, then go back, kind of fix it, then keep going. But that can, for me, I found that can get me caught up in trying to make it perfect, and then I don't get the words on the page. Yes. And I love, because I'm a pantser and part of the discovery, I always realize the characters have been plotting this somewhere in here. So when I see what I did on, let's say, chapter 30, and how it sometimes ties seamlessly to chapter 2, I'm like, that was figuring itself out.
It's uncanny, isn't it?
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
You're like, where does this stuff come from?
I know.
I sometimes feel like I'm a radio and I'm receiving a transmission and just putting it onto the paper as much as you can.
Exactly. And I don't know, that just feels like it's really connected to the free flow sort of writing, because let's with your more plotting way, Craig, don't you find that you have those moments where you're like, oh, what I plotted doesn't make sense. Now I need to come up with something else?
So, my plotting process wasn't super, super detailed, but it was like chapter 1, this is the main points. Chapter 2 is the main points. And that way, I could set something up. It was easier to set something up early and then and later, as opposed to, I've written a whole chapter. Now I got to work this thing in, right? So if I thought about it beforehand, I know how to work it in, at that point. But yeah, things would absolutely always take on a life of their own and change. But then I would probably go and update all my chapter points and replot, But that was listen, I got a problem. We know that. Let's.
You're probably a big Scrivener user, right?
I was at the time. Yeah.
I looked at that and I can't figure it out. I saw that I can. It's just that. You know what I think? See how the way you look at perhaps sort of just free writing and it intimidates you. I look at Scrivener and like figuring out all your plot points and the color lines and I feel anxiety. I'm like, it seems like it's taking something away from what I'm doing. And I've been doing it so long that I already know if I write this in chapter 2 that it's got to connect to this. I don't need a program to tell me that. And that's not to say it's not useful, but I just make my own notes. Dictation is great for writing out of sequence when you need to get those big things written as well, because oftentimes the connecting portions aren't, I don't want to say they're not big, but it's the bigger scenes you might need. Like this, I don't know.
I know exactly what you mean, though. It's like, I think in some ways as well, things like, oh, I'm going to get Scrivener. Oh, I'm going to, like, for me, it's, oh, I'm going to use the Dan Harmon story circle method. I'm going to use Save the Cat. And you're sitting there, and your novel is sitting there going, like,
exactly.
Pay this attention to me.
That's 100% what it is. It is so easy to be distracted. So there was Scrivener, and if you did NaNoWriMo and completed it, and I just did the 50,000 words, you could get like a discount on Scrivener. So I looked at Scrivener, and then there's another one. What's it? Eon Town or something? Eon something. And it's like lines and graphs and where does this character fit? No, I'm already like, if I spend that time, I'm not going to be writing. So I'm better off figuring out, okay, so my hero, went to try to find the missing person in chapter 3, and his brother, got conked over the head. I just I fit the puzzle in my own mind. I don't need to do that. But that said, there might be a time where I just write a note. Okay, so chapter 3, the brother does. I just like write a simple, quick note
Right.
that
And I think part of it too is like how good your
I don't know.
memory is. Like,
Yeah,
I have
for now.
I have a terrible memory, right? So I kind of like need to have things written down, or I will just forget them. And it's just, that's
Feels
how
so.
my brain works. But
Yeah.
but
No, I
like,
realize it feels overwhelming when I look at it like that in a way, because what if I don't put every single arc in there? Then I feel like like I'm missing. I don't know. So I'd rather, for me, for now, I kind of want to learn a program like that, but then I also feel like I have my method. It's been working. Do I need to do this?
and listen, Scrivener is complicated. I didn't use it to its full potential for sure. I pretty much really just used it for, plotting things out, which, we did an episode, it's coming out next week, on OneNote. And that's my new crack. Like, I've been like, ever since that episode, we recorded that episode and I learned about this, I've been like, everything's going into OneNote. I feel like I could write a novel in OneNote. But yeah, like, it's, to me, this organization, it's just everything's being organized. And then that's how I would do it now, is I would put in my plot points into, folders in OneNote, and then be able to have it. And then,
You
write.
wouldn't forget it, Craig.
I would
you?
forget it. Oh my God.
You would really like forget your major plot point? Come on. Would you?
I forget everything. It's not just about writing, everything. I have to take notes. I have very bad memory. But yeah, I mean, especially if your writing is taking a long time, and my brain is very scattered. I'm ADD as well as OCD, all that stuff. So I'm thinking about 8 million things and forgetting half of them, I'm sure. So I pretty much have to write them down as I go, or I have to keep saying them in my head until I can get somewhere where I can write them down. So otherwise, that's it. It's gone. But no, I can see the value here for sure.
I think it sounded like, when I was looking at, what's the other one? There's Scrivener. There's a new one that novel something. I guess it's like Scrivener, but it's cheaper.
There's
now I think if you're
as well, isn't there? Or
yeah, there's too many, and they're all making money.
Like
I should develop one, but they are. If you have like a series, I think, and you've got other books that might connect, and characters that maybe connect in a small, like I can see that. I can see the world building being more useful, or like benefiting more from that, I think, for me.
Yes, and specifically that is how it came up. We did an episode with where we were talking about somebody who had written a whole series. I think it was like 12 books or something like that, and she was keeping track of it in OneNote. And then we went and did a whole OneNote episode, and that is really one of the big benefits, is keeping track of all that sort of stuff, all this, especially if you're writing with someone else. But even if you're not, like, I mean, what Roland always tells the story about his in book 1 the guy was an only child, in book 3 he's got a sister or whatever.
I was thinking that same thing. Yeah, it's like in book 1 we had a character who was his brother, and then I wrote 9 books where he's an only child. I'm like, that's why you need something like that.
He was dead to me, so I don't even think about him.
Yeah, no. How did you handle that?
I'll tell you what. Well, first of all, in real life, I went back and I re-updated the version. But I also said to myself, all my books are written in first person, so therefore that character who was like, oh, he's his brother, I had said in my head, she thought he was the brother, because they were his closest brothers, but they weren't actually brothers.
Okay.
And he was kind of the antagonist to her, so that kind of made sense. And I'm just justifying it now. So just go with it.
I know my daughter has there's a book called, there's a series of books, the Warrior Cats series. I don't know if you have daughters at all, Roland.
I do. I'm going to write this down because she might like that. She loves cats.
Oh yeah, it's huge. But there are so many books, and it's a team of writers, and I think it's put up by HarperCollins. So they should have somebody who goes through and catches those mistakes. So my daughter will say, oh, and like this book, this character was already dead. Now it's alive again in like the next, 10 books later. So they're not keeping track of I think because they're selling a lot, but still, people who read all the books are like, didn't you kill him off in book 3? So
they should have a continuity editor at that.
Yeah. Oh no, and they can afford it,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're using it. So I do see the value in for speed, for not getting distracted, for being able to just write. I mean, I probably could write a lot faster if I did that. If I was writing novels again, if I had time to do that, I'd probably do 10,000 words a day in emails. But if I was writing a lot of a book, and then I picked it up and started sort of just, belting out a chapter or a scene or whatever, you could always work that in later in the editing process.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, I'd probably do a lot of repetition, I'd forget what I talked about or whatever, but that can all be fixed in the editing. So yeah, I think, have you tried other ones? You said Dragon is the one you use now.
Yeah. So I tried, there was one, is it free? Otter.ai. It's free. I think it's like web-based. Oh, and what is the other one?
I'm looking at a list of different ones
speech,
here.
Speech notes. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Too? Yeah.
What I found, and honestly, this does take a lot of time, because in the group where people were talking about, people don't want to pay for Dragon, but honestly, you get what you pay for. Dragon is the top. The new one, 15, if you have an accent like Roland, you're not necessarily going to have an issue, right? Like some people had heavy accents. So version 9 was like, what did you say? But this one kind of understands, okay, you've got this accent, you have this, and it really makes it easy. But
Siri never understands a word I say.
Oh, okay, well then you might have a problem. Sorry, back to the question again. I just lost it.
Oh, I'm sorry. You were saying
No.
that if you have an accent or anything like that, you this Dragon software, you get what you pay for.
Yes.
Because...
But Craig asked me something.
Oh, I was just saying whether you have tried any other software other than Dragon.
I know what I was going to say. It's the punctuation. You may think that this is not a big deal, because one person said, oh, I'm typing with Otter and it's okay, I'll go back and add the punctuation later. It is a lot to add all your apostrophes, all your period. Just imagine, like, let's say you've done 4,000 words. That's a lot to go back and add on top of editing. So I need my punctuation in there, and that's where Dragon really shines. I will tell you, the one flaw of using Dragon is when you say things like begin quote, "Are you kind of going to the store today?" ? You find sometimes you leave voicemails and you're like, "Hey Dave, so am I going to see you at the store later?" ? And you're like, "Oh damn," right? It just comes out because you're used to dictating, and you hope that people aren't like, "What?" And but that's one of the, what do you call it? What's the word for it? You know what I mean?
Of the software. Well, actually,
Yeah.
So that brings up a good point. Actually, I was thinking to myself when you were saying that originally that I was like, wow, so you are just dictating and it knows where to put in all the punctuation and everything. But no, you've got to say the specific things. You
can choose Dragon to put the punctuation in for you, but I haven't tried that. Actually, I think I had it set up where it was sort of doing that, and I didn't necessarily love where it chose the punctuation. I want to control that. But Dragon does what it did do, I think did look pretty good, but other programs won't do it at all. So I would sit there with Otter and try to say begin quote, nothing, or it would write the words begin quote out.
Right.
And I'm like, no, I want to jump into dialogue, because sometimes that's where dictation is great. Like I used to work in the film business, so maybe I can credit doing some acting with a little bit of improv, so I can get a good dialogue going between my characters. So sometimes I might be dialogue heavy in this moment, as Craig and Roland fight, like I don't want to be, impeded by, you're not giving me my begin quote, whatever, like I have to, you know what I mean? Then
you have to, but doesn't that slow it down then? Like you're like,
no,
begin quote, Roland said this, begin quote,
no,
except that. And,
no, it does become, it doesn't, because it becomes part of your flow. You just know that you need to say it. Begin, right. Well, I don't know, I wouldn't say begin quote. Roland looked across the screen at Craig, eyeing him with that evil stare, period.
Oh, all right.
He was wondering what he was thinking, period. Was he thinking about the conversation they'd had before the show, ? He still needed to get revenge because Craig had spilled his lunch, whatever. You just sort of go off, right? Whatever. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, throw it out.
I was going to say, yeah, Craig, my lunch. I'm still salty about that.
That's right.
when I'm feeling I'm
Craig's
on a
not
bit of,
convinced. Craig is like, yeah.
well, listen, you almost had me, but now I feel like I'm on a roller coaster here. Like I was like, first I was like, nah, this doesn't work. And then you're like, oh, make it faster and you can stop your editing. And I'm like, oh, actually it could work. And now with the whole quote business, oh, I think that would
No,
drive
you
me.
don't. If it's okay, you know what? Here's what it is. If it's easier for you to add that later, that's fine. If it's easier for you to do blocks of like what I just did, I didn't actually do any quote like chatting. If it's easier for you to do blocks of descriptive, text, do that. If it's easy, I just begin quote, stop looking at me, exclamation mark, end quote, she said. It just becomes part of what you do. So if I'm in that, I don't want to have to go back and add that. But Dragon is really pretty good, I think, at figuring out what you're saying. So I don't like the others because of the punctuation for the most part. That's what I found. Some of the others will be good at getting like just the text you say, but they're not good at the punctuation. And that takes away time from me in the end.
So what do you have to do if you make a mistake? Like, do you say, erase last sentence or something like that?
So, this is where Dragon is better as well. And Dragon should be paying me probably for this. Let's send them something because they have a new app called Dragon Anywhere. So while you can transcribe with a recorder, so sometimes this happened to me. I was at the grocery store. I bought groceries. I opened my trunk. I put them in, and somehow, I guess my keys went in the trunk. I closed the trunk, didn't realize my door was locked. So I had to wait like 30 minutes for my mother to come get me. What was I going to do at this time? I had my phone. So I went and sat, and I used the recorder app because I think like anything on your Android or your iPhone, they record really well. And I would email that file to myself and transcribe it later. But Dragon now has Dragon Anywhere, which is an app that you can open, and as you speak, you see it putting the words on the screen, and then you can just email the file that's already transcribed. So in that program, and maybe even within the transcribing, and I haven't tried, you can say delete last line. You can use the same commands that you would at the computer. I've done it a few times. I just don't do it all the time, but you can. So it really makes it, I think they've tried to make that program because it's $15 a month. You don't really need it if you already have the desktop, if you have a recorder, if you have your smartphone but I bought it when they offered it at 50% off for the year because it's the toy. Like, oh, okay, if I have this, I'll do more dictating, right? Like, so I'm trying to make sure that I fit that in. So there's been a few times when I've woken up in bed and I feel tired, but I get my phone and then I'm like, let me just write a scene. And I'm like, oh my God, I did 3 pages. So where I might not have done that otherwise, it sort of helps.
See, now you're swinging back to, bringing me on board. Cause now I'm like, my whole day, I got to get up, I got to walk a few feet to my office. Now I'm like, I could cut that part out with just picking up my phone, do my work right from bed. Oh my God.
There were some people that when I was talking to them on the Facebook group, they would be out walking, let's say their dogs, and they had their recorder, with the whatever mic, and they would be dictating as they're walking. And I said, well, what about people passing you? Because that's like, I wouldn't want to be walking on a path and, dictating a fight scene or a sex scene, let's say. And she said she's gotten a few looks from people because she's dictated a couple racy things. And people are like, but she hasn't let that stop her. I'm like, no, I'm not quite there. But, if I could find myself a quiet rock as I did waiting for my mother, I sat and I dictated because I didn't have a laptop. And that's 30 minutes in which I would feel like I wasted 30 minutes. And instead I got something done.
Yeah, that sounds like a big benefit as well, as the ability to just do it from anywhere, not have that sort of downtime, be able to fill that downtime with something other than playing, I don't know, Candy Crush or whatever on your phone.
Oh God, yeah, exactly.
So, what happens if you get in some kind of weird loop where like the person in the story is trying to say delete last line, man, and then it just keeps deleting your last line.
I've had it happen where, like, let's say someone wants to say, that's enough, period. you know, and then it thinks you meant period, right? So that's probably the only thing I've had with that. You know, you're going to have to make corrections. Let's not assume that Dragon is going to be 100% amazing in all ways, because again, you're not writing your first to last draft. You probably could be better if you sat down and wrote that way, because you could see it, you could go back and correct it, but you're still going to ultimately edit it. So as long as I have more pages through dictation, then I have something to edit, which often then leads me to the next idea that I can write about the next time when I decide to dictate. So if I've, you know, I remember hearing Spike Lee's advice on writing was to always stop writing when you're in the middle of a scene. Because, you know, when you finish your scene, it's nice, everyone's gone to bed or whatever. Then the next day you're like, okay.
Yeah, you got to
What do I write about? And you have no clue you might not have any clue where to start. So if you stop in the middle of the action, oh, I got to pick up in the action, and it helps you to continue. So, you know, I don't know if that made any sense, but like if you're...
That makes perfect sense. That's very good advice.
Yeah, I think that's probably amongst the best advice I've ever heard, really.
Yeah, so
Craig's not sold. Look at
listen,
Craig. I see.
I'm seeing there are ways to make this work for everybody, but
yeah,
there's ways to make this work as sort of a as part of an overall strategy too, right?
Exactly.
Where you're writing some and you're dictating some. Like there's a time and a place where it's all going to work. And like you said, you're not writing your final draft either when you're typing it. So yeah, there's probably more things to edit when you're dictating than when you're typing, but I think you make up for it in the volume, right? You get more words and pages done faster, and then you edit later. So I can see the value. So if you because I know a lot of software has, I think even Word, like, I mean, you can probably turn on voice to speech or something.
Yeah,
like
I think Dragon Word just bought Dragon, something like that.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, well, because there used to be, when you said that there used to be two, there was Dragon and there was something that I
don't remember the name.
Was it with Microsoft? It was horrible. It wasn't as good. But I have tried, because even on your phone, like if you have Office 365, which I do, they have the little microphone thing. So I will try, and it will pick up things. It will be effective, but then you'll get to the punctuation. It's not always. Dragon is still better, but I think Microsoft, I'm fairly certain they bought it. If you can't beat them, buy them. So that's
Microsoft is the king of them.
Yes. Right. So that's what they've done, and I think maybe the transition is kind of happening now. But you were asking me something. I cut you off. Do you want me to talk about headsets? You guys, you should all be dictating. So
tell us about headsets, because like, I'm while you're talking, I was Googling like the Dragon Mobile and stuff. Would you recommend Dragon Mobile off the top of your head?
The Dragon Anywhere?
Yep.
Yes. So here's what I would say. If you don't have the Dragon desktop version with transcription, you could just invest in the Dragon Anywhere, and it's $15 a month. And you don't have to have it every month. You could be like, this month I want to write, or I plan to write a lot in these 2 months. You have it for those 2 months, then you don't have it, then you can get it again. And that's kind of what I did with it when they finally said, hey, how would you feel about a year at 50% off? And I went, okay, fine. So I did that. But if you have the desktop one, you don't need it. But if you want it and you can afford it, then, why not? It prevents you from having to go take your file and then transcribe it later. You can just email it and have the full, your full text. And that saves some time as well. Usually I would come home if I transcribed, and I would hook up the computer, I'd go get myself a coffee, and then as that's happened transcribing, I fill those moments. But if you don't want to wait, Dragon Anywhere is a good option. And I do like to use it with even a headset. So I have the recorder, which was for the older program. I still use it sometimes. But this, I found this for $5. You guys, Dollarama, right? Dollarama has turned into
Yep.
$5 You might have noticed lately.
Well,
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I saw a dollar
Yeah.
store now. It's
Yeah.
$1.25 store.
that
Yeah,
bugs me,
I went from $1 to that's. But in any case, they said, well, we can get better things. So one of the things was this microphone. This is a fantastic microphone. I think it's like maybe normally $15-20. I got it for $5. So when you put this, and of course it goes closer to your face, so it hears you better. I find my dictation is pretty much almost always 100%. The mistakes are mine. If I mumble, if I realize I didn't want that word, and you just take the edge end and put into your phone, if you're using your phone, because there's no point in spending money on a recorder unless you really want to be that person now. Your phone.
Do they even make them now?
Yeah, I think they still do. They probably do.
For all
You know,
those
if you need-
hipsters in Brooklyn who are like,
yeah. You can find one somewhere on eBay. But I mean, you might need your phone. You might want your phone to be accessible for a phone call, as opposed to dictating. So if you want, you can plug this into your recorder, or you plug this into your phone, and then you just get better. I mean, I'm going to tell you. I've done this, and I drive too, right? Maybe if that's illegal, let's cut that out. But
Are you
No, I think
writing
it's fine, it's
while you're
hands-free.
driving?
I just have, okay, if I didn't have a headset on and I'm talking, it's not illegal. You're on a phone call, right? I'm not listening. I'm just dictating. But I don't, so, I mean, I'm sure if they saw me with a headset on, they might be like, you're impeding your ears, but whatever.
it's very difficult to type when you're driving anyway. I mean, you have to put down your coffee and everything.
Yeah, but you can, like, if you had a moment where you're like, oh, I know what this scene is, like, so the point is, if you are in traffic, or let's say you were that brave person on a train, but there's a lot of background noise, then because this is noise canceling for $5, this allows you to have that noise around you and still get good dictation. So you're walking in a forest, whatever it is, this one is, I got off of Amazon, MPAL. This was like 30 something though. I have an obsession with headsets, I guess, because of dictation and just in general. I just like earbuds, headsets, but I don't like to buy a lot. I don't like to spend a lot of money because I lose them or I break them. Like this one broke, so I've taped it, but it's a good one. But
it's so validating because there are so many things that you do that I'm like, because I'm always breaking headsets. These things are glued together.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and then I'm like, see, when I broke this, I was like, oh, I could just go buy a new one. And I said, no, stop. This is an obsession. Like, it was an excuse for that. And I'm like, no, like, this is still, like, I still hear music through here well. So I'm like, let me just tape this, and not, but whatever. So I find cheap headsets work. Logitech, you don't have to buy, like, the $300 headset to get it to work with Dragon. In fact, it's a waste of money. The only thing that made sense was to buy a better recorder. Like I have the Sony, whatever, it was a $200 version at the time. But you just need something now, either a headset, maybe like this, that if you put it into your phone, you see that it captures your voice well.
Yeah, I think so just to go back a little bit there, because I looked it up. So Nuance was the company I was thinking of. They were, I think at the time, competitors with Dragon. Then they
are.
Really? Nuance bought Dragon, or Dragon bought whatever. And then very recently in 2021, Microsoft bought Nuance, so which owns Dragon. So
find the original competitor to because I thought there was a different company. I feel like there was something with
there probably was.
Like way back when.
I thought I had a V in it, but yeah,
maybe.
I don't know. But yeah, there's probably a whole bunch of them, but they are owned now by Microsoft, so maybe we'll see them sort of integrate it right into the Office suite or something like that, because it actually isn't supposed to. I do, but I don't know if you'd be able to do it for Excel or something like that, but maybe.
What about Roland? Are you an Office user?
I'm an Office user, although I've got really into Google stuff recently because...
Yeah, what's wrong with Office and Google? I just don't understand. Why are people doing Scrivener and Novelpad and what is this? Explain.
I mean, for sharing, like we use Google Docs and stuff like
Google's
that.
Great.
Yeah.
That's what I think. Google's great for that.
Yeah.
I had my Microsoft account hacked, and so I had to make do with Google. And then afterwards, I'm like, oh, screw paying $70 a year for Office 365. I'll just use Google.
Which I just was on the cusp of. You know how programs are. They seem to know when you when you'll fold, because for the longest time I had it wasn't syncing up properly, the Office, so I wouldn't get it necessarily on my computer to my laptop, and then it would say suddenly, like 3 weeks before I needed to either cancel it completely, because I don't believe in subscriptions, but I did do the 50% off this year. Anyway, suddenly it starts working flawlessly. Oh, look here. Oh, there it is within seconds. Oh, it's on my phone. So I said, okay, I will do it for this year, but I might not continue next year.
There was some guy in Seattle who was like,
oh yeah, he's like, we missed out on Kayla.
Kayla Perrin.
Yeah, the moment.
She's about
literally,
to fold.
literally, not even a lie. I said to my daughter, "This is now when it finally works." So now that if I open my phone, so I'm exactly where I was, because if I can't dictate, but I could go into the file. But it's more money in their pocket every time you keep paying them monthly. So we'll see what I do next year.
Yeah.
But
no, I listen, I agree. I pay Office 365. I don't like the fact that it's a monthly fee, but because I got the business, I can write it off. So that's how I justify it now. But
yeah.
I do like that it's, I can put it on my phone, I can put it on my whatever. And then, especially now that I'm Mr. OneNote, and that all syncs up in the cloud and blah, 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 So that works out. But I think, in general, though, like there's been a lot of good information here. And even though I'm not 100% sure if it would work for me in all situations, I do actually think that if I was to at some point get my time back and be able to write another book, I probably could find a use for having like the on the go thing, because there are lots of times where I don't want to, or I can't go up to my office, but I have some time and I do think of something, and I could just pop it in there and then just merge it in later. Like I can totally see that. So I think there's probably, people listening, there's going to be all sorts of that sort of thing. Like it works really well for one and not for others. And this has been a lot, when we first talked about this, I was like, is there enough to talk about for a podcast? And like, you've gone over so many things that, I didn't even really think about. So, it's been really, really useful and really illuminating for me, at least. And so probably for others as well.
3 months from now, Craig's going to be dictating books. Like, let's.
It might be. We're
gonna. I want that message when he's like, hey,
I'm
you know what? I'm dictating.
Dragon Anywhere, like today. I'm
gonna
do the 7-day free trial just to see what it's like.
Yeah. Try it. Let me know what you think.
Yeah, no, for sure.
It's a bit of a learning curve, but don't give up on it. And if it doesn't work, you don't have to use it. That's the other thing, right?
I'll say Kayla Perrin sent me, and it's not working.
Yes.
So
there we go.
No, I'm quite optimistic that it would, because I mean, my problem is the fact you got 3 kids and you're always juggling things and stuff, and so you end up wasting so much time.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm standing here waiting for this, standing here waiting for that. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and if you can get a waterproof version, have it in the shower. That's where I come up with most of my.
Oh my goodness! Oh, there we go. That's a good one. That's good. Oh no.
So we
Maybe you should just enjoy the shower. Enjoy the shower.
You're right.
We're running up to the top of the hour, so unfortunately we have to wrap things up. Kayla, where can people find out more about you, find your books, everything like that?
Okay, well, they can go to authorkaylaperrin.com. That's my website. I'm on Instagram at authorkaylaperrin. I've got a Facebook page or a couple pages. You can just look up Kayla Perrin. Twitter is not what it once was, but I'm still there at Kayla Perrin. And I'm trying to do a bit of TikTok at author Kayla Perrin.
Well, that is wonderful. And we're going to, I'll pop a link down below so people can find you. And thank you so much for joining us. This has been a fascinating conversation and a fun one, I have to admit. I've my cheeks are hurting from laughing.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I'm glad. Good. That it went well. I'm always nervous.
Oh, well, I don't think Craig and I are people you should get nervous about. But Craig, do you have anything else to add before we wrap things up?
Just what I was saying, like, I personally, I think that there's probably a really good way to integrate this into all sorts of different writing styles, whether you go full bore on it and just, everything dictation all the time, or you just sort of integrate it into the times that would work for you. I think that there's probably a lot of really good ways to do it. And even for somebody like me, who's more plotting wise, I think that it really actually would speed things up for me. It would sort of force me to not self-edit as much as I do, which is really what slows me down. It takes me forever to write a paragraph. So yeah, I mean, thanks for coming on and sharing with us about this. And I think a lot of people are going to get a lot of value out of this recording.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It was such a pleasure. So thank you so much. If you have appreciated what Kayla has come to let us know about, then make sure you drop a comment down below and leave any questions or anything else that you like. If you haven't already, whether you're listening to this as a podcast or whether you're watching on YouTube, please click that subscribe button. And we will be back next week with another special guest for another episode of Fully Booked. Thank you so much for supporting us.